Hi, welcome. This is the second video in the Monster Ambivalence series, and this video is called Vampire Ambivalence. I started talking last time in the first video about what the monster figure does and taking the vampire as a case. And what I want to suggest is that there's something about the effect this works on us which is ambivalent, and it's that ambivalence that I want to talk about. I think it's illustrated quite well by this poster which we began talking about last time, and promotional materials for Dracula from 1958, directed by Terence Fisher. What we see here is this hybrid or liminal quality, paradoxical you might say. The terrifying lover who died yet lived. This is the classic grey zone of horror, the grey zone of zombie movies and vampire films. The state of being undead, the living death, this uncanny place somewhere between our familiar categories of life on one side and death on the other. And, you know, it's replicated in a way throughout the experience of the monster. I mean, the monster is the lover who died yet lived, but it's also the figure that could be conceived as a lover and yet is terrifying at the same time, a bringer of contradictory reactions inherently. So what I think is really interesting about what the monster does is what it actually reveals about us, or what it reveals about what we could call the potential of the subject, that this is so open-ended. You know, we can react in different ways, and it reveals aspects of our condition as subjects. Ways in which we're both constrained but also potential that we have, and this potential is revealing of a kind of social and cultural context which I think we can explore in a way which is extremely interesting. At any rate, this process is inherent to the horror genre. The horror genre is predicated, as the name itself suggested, on a process of affect. What kind of condition is supposed to be induced in the viewer, like other typical non-highbrow genres like the thriller, for example. The vampire genre has an inherent problem, however, which is the methods that it uses to induce horror become conventions that are repeated, that become familiar. And through this, there's a tendency for the power of the horror to be reduced over time. The genre has a tendency, an inherent tendency to atrophy. And I think this is quite apparent if you track the history of Hammer horror, for example, the staple of horror movies, the declining popularity over time, which is kind of the way in which familiarity breeds contempt. So there are always possibilities there in terms of, and a kind of paradox that creative efforts may achieve a horror effect much more effectively by breaking out of the conventions and doing something unexpected. I mean, classic example of that, if anybody has seen it, is the movie The Blair Witch Project, which creates a reaction by blurring the boundary between fiction and non-fiction. The fact that you feel as you're watching this film that it could be recording in the manner of a documentary film real events accentuates the sense in which unpleasant things happening creates an impact on you as the viewer.